quick one for everyone. What level do you think the fee cap would need to be raised to in order for a market to emerge in higher education? And specifically for John, at what level do you think it will become apparent that MMU would have to start charging differently from other universities?
Yep, I think we'll go to John.
I'm doubtful whether a true free market will ever emerge, because it's not just about the fee level. That we've got, it is about, for an elastic market to exist, it's got to be price, volume, and market sensitivity. Now we've got price, okay, and we can vary that. We're capped in student numbers, so we haven't got volume. And actually, what's the other measure is A-level points on entry. So actually, it's a very complicated market that you're describing. And I know I've listened to the Vice Chancellor of the University of Leeds argue that it has to be 10, 15, 20,000 pounds for a free market to exist. Well, maybe, but I think it will be a pseudo-free market at the very top end. What would the level of MMU be for it to be different? I think we've got a real challenge, because we're now the third most popular university in the UK, on the heels of Leeds, and I hope we haven't taken them soon. So in many respects, we are extremely popular. Great point to start from. How would we want to be different from others? Well, we want to give a good quality, world-class education to our students, so we have to be economically competitive. But we want to hold on to the principle of inclusion. So I'm not going to give you a figure, but I do think that it's a balance of all those things. And we've not made the assumption in our strategic plan that the cuts that government are making will be replaced by the additional fee.
It is complex, I suppose, and I think one of the things is that it's about how what people feel is an acceptable level of an increase. So, you know, could we go to 5,000 and not see a drop in applications? Could we go to 5,000 and all institutions feel comfortable charging that amount to possibly plug the hole for a reduction in investment from government? And I mean, it is complicated also because we are predicted less 18 to 21-year-olds entering higher education over the next decade. There are less 18 to 21-year-olds around this in the forthcoming years. And so where are those extra student numbers going to come from? Where are we going to see an increase in postgraduate, or are we going to see an increase in mature and part-time? Are we going to see, and what will that do to the volume and to the rate? I think one of the things to be mindful of is this has where you place yourself in any such market, if a market exists, has massive implications for institutions, and institutions that are already quite rich. If they are still able to receive the same level of public investment in terms of government money as those institutions, if they're able to charge high fees but still retain lots of public investment, then they are only going to simply get richer. And those other institutions that might not be able to charge as much or not wish to charge as much will be unable to compete. So when a market does emerge, if it does emerge, it could have serious implications for whether institutions are able to continue to exist as they are.
1 million. The Lib Dems could fund 500,000. It's easy, right? So that you know, these are the choices that you'd have to make. That's a pretty tough choice.
And
I
the social,
understand that, but
yeah.
in the context of what's happening socially in this country, it sounds, if you take that number out of context and say 500,000, that's one in, or half of what are already in education, it'd be interesting to see how many people have been accepted into higher education, but then how many people aren't being accepted in higher education.
Well, we know
now.
That. We know that.
Yeah.
We know that very precisely. And,
yeah.
I mean, at the moment, from last year coming through to this year, there were 46,000 applicants who were appropriately qualified to enter higher education who were unable to do so. Okay, and so that number sort of runs through year on year and grows a bit as we're up, because we've been capped in terms of student numbers now. So we're capped in terms of the number of spaces. So there's already a substantial excess of demand for a number of places. So, you know, if you're serious about equality of opportunity, then you really ought to say, well, why should we not allow those 46,000 students to gain places in university? Or why should it only be those that have high-income parents who can afford to pay more to send them to? So that's the issue, really. It's not, unfortunately, we had a little chat over coffee. We actually agree on so many issues. It's not a very exciting debate. So I think it's absolutely right. It is a balance between the contribution and participation rate and equality of opportunity.
And if you look at the social mix of universities when the participation rate was 10%, and the numbers of people coming from lower socioeconomic backgrounds was like 0. Yeah, it was those people who were able to get scholarships, or those people who were able to get into a grammar school in order to then get the types of qualifications, or into the right type of networks to be able to see higher education as an option and a route. And I think certainly for me, and I know for many others in N.U.S, and those people who voted for our policy position, believe that it should be about equality of opportunity, it should be about widening participation rates. And actually, one of the sad things is that when you talk to people about, you know, the 50% target rate, not a lot of people value it. Not a lot of people look at it as, you know, if we reduce, if we go back, if we take away fees, then what it would mean for them and for their children and for their brothers and sisters. Lots of people think it as, oh, I'll get into education, I'll be fine, I'll be all right. But actually, often it's those people who wouldn't have been able to access education, or wouldn't have been able to send their children or their brothers and sisters.
I was one of that generation where it was one in 20 when I went to university, and I didn't realise it was elitist, but when I look back, of course it was. Because it was only people that went to grammar school. In fact, it was only the top third of those who went to grammar school that got to university. So it's a completely different environment.
It is, but then it's interesting to see how other vocations decreased as a result of that. So when I'm thinking about this debate, I'm not thinking about it in the context of just education. I'm thinking about how it has wider impacts on the wider community as well. And then, like, obviously, like you're saying, it was elitist, but that's because because of the way that education was funded. Because the way that people make money, like they've just released that, like, those 50 billionaires. Like the amount of the money they've made in the last decade, it's gone up like 30%. So there's enough money in the world to pay for people to be educated. So it's all right to talk about this in this political context, but when we talk about it in the wider context, in global social policy, there's enough money to pay for people to be educated.
Yeah, but you know, there's an issue here, which is that we can never go backwards. We can't return to the Stone Age because electricity is difficult to make.
Oh, no.
Let me just finish the point. And we can no longer compete in low-level manufacturing with the Far East and the Middle East. So the only future for our society is a knowledge-based economy. And if we are serious about that, we need to give our young people an opportunity, not through apprenticeships. You can no longer train to be a mechanic and a bricklayer and so on. You need to get knowledge skills to give advantage in employment. That's why, politically, you engage in 50% participation, because you genuinely believe that the jobs of the 21st century will be in knowledge economy. And that's why I'm in this business, because it is about giving young people those opportunities. We've done that. We at University UK did some market sensitivity analysis of the effect of increasing fees and loans and so on. For every £1,000 increase in fees, participation rate drops by 4%. Okay, so that's what we predict. For every £1,000 increase in loan, participation rate increases by 3.5%. And for every £1,000 increase in grant, participation rate increases by 2%. Now, that's not quite what you'd expect, but it just shows you how complicated this really is. So if you accept the fact that because demography is dropping, participation rate as a percentage is going to increase. So actually that's why the analysts come to the conclusion that a probable recommendation from Brown is going to be the fee cap raising to 5,000 and an appropriate grant loan and repayment scheme around interest rates set at maybe 2%. That's what seems to be emerging, which is not that different from the contribution scheme that you've heard from Susan.
First of all, I'd like to thank John Brooks for attending.
Without an E, by the way. Never have had an E, I don't want one now.
Although it's unfortunate that it turns out we don't have a really right-wing, nasty Vice Chancellor that we can do this. I think we have had some really insightful input and some fabulous facts, as he puts it himself. Also like to thank Susan, who has taken her time today to come down and get all of us signed up for the Vote for Students, and has been working really hard with this campaign. We're all thankful very much for her. And David as well, who has been able to provide some really good bits and pieces on the way that we can work with the university. Thank you very much for coming. We do now have the student forum, where you can hold me to account for the fact that we've got no community, amongst other things as well. So stick around for that. However, we are now losing John.
Well, thanks for the invitation, and it's been very interesting what you, Susan, and good luck with your campaign.
Cheers,
actually,
thank you.
yeah, really, I think we're all in it together. Actually.
Yeah.